Sri Krishna expounds on Karm Yog or the Yoga of action in this chapter. He explains to Arjun that nobody can remain without action, even for a moment. Bound by their inherent modes of nature, all beings are always engaged in some work. Superior are those who practice Karm Yog and continue to work diligently to fulfill their responsibilities externally, but internally they are unattached to them. However, the hypocrites display external renunciation but internally dwell upon the objects of their senses. Sri Krishna says that all living beings are an integral part of God's creation and have roles and responsibilities to fulfill. Vedas prescribe performing yajna to please the celestial gods, who in return bestow material gains. These yajnas cause rains to fall, which aids in the production of food grains for the sustenance of life on earth. Those who live only for the delight of their senses and do not accept their responsibility in this cycle are sinful and living in vain. However, Sri Krishna says that when works or prescribed duties are performed as an obligation to God, they are also considered yajna, sacrifice. He then explains that unlike the rest of humankind, the enlightened souls are not obliged to fulfill their bodily responsibilities. They are situated in knowledge of the self and execute higher responsibilities of the soul. However, they do not abandon their social duties, as it may create disharmony in the minds of the common people who look up to them for inspiration. Therefore, the wise continue to work without any personal motive, only to set good examples for others to follow. Else, the ignorant may abandon their prescribed duties prematurely. Sri Krishna mentions one such example of the enlightened King Janak, who performed his earthly duties as an ideal king and father. Arjun then asks Sri Krishna why people commit sin, even when unwilling, as if by some force. Lord Krishna explains that lust alone is the sinful, all-devouring enemy. Similar to a fire that is covered by smoke or a mirror covered in dust, desire shrouds one's knowledge and deludes the intellect. In the end, Sri Krishna advises Arjun that by controlling the senses, mind, and intellect, one can slay this enemy called desire, which is an embodiment of sin. Arjun said, "O Janardhan, if you consider knowledge superior to action, then why do you ask me to wage this terrible war? My intellect is bewildered by your ambiguous advice. Please tell me decisively the one path by which I may attain the highest good." Chapter 1 introduced the setting in which Arjun's grief and lamentation arose, creating a reason for Sri Krishna to give spiritual instructions. In Chapter 2, the Lord first explained knowledge of the immortal self. He then reminded Arjun of his duty as a warrior, and said that performing it would result in glory and the celestial abodes. After prodding Arjun to do his occupational work as a Kshatriya, Sri Krishna then revealed a superior principle, the science of Karm Yog, and asked Arjun to detach himself from the fruits of his works. In this way, bondage-creating karmas would be transformed into bondage-breaking karmas. He termed the science of working without desire for rewards as Buddhi Yog, or Yog of the intellect. By this, he meant that the mind should be detached from worldly temptations by controlling it with a resolute intellect, and the intellect should be made unwavering through the cultivation of spiritual knowledge. He did not suggest that action should be given up, but rather that attachment to the fruits of actions should be given up. Arjun misunderstood Sri Krishna's intention, thinking that if knowledge is superior to action, then why should he perform the ghastly duty of waging this war? Hence, he says, by making contradictory statements, you are bewildering my intellect. I know you are merciful and your desire is not to baffle me, so please dispel my doubt. The Lord said, O sinless one, the two paths leading to enlightenment were previously explained by me. The path of knowledge for those inclined toward contemplation, and the path of work for those inclined toward action. In verse 2.39, Sri Krishna explained the two paths leading to spiritual perfection. The first is the acquisition of knowledge through the analytical study of the nature of the soul and its distinction from the body. Sri Krishna refers to this as Sankhya Yoga. People with a philosophic bent of mind are inclined toward this path of knowing the self through intellectual analysis. The second is the process of working in the spirit of devotion to God, or Karm Yog. Sri Krishna also calls this Buddhi Yoga as explained in the previous verse. Working in this manner purifies the mind, and knowledge naturally awakens in the purified mind, thus leading to enlightenment. Amongst people interested in the spiritual path, there are those who are inclined toward contemplation, and then there are those inclined to action. Hence, both these paths have existed ever since the soul's aspiration for God realization has existed. Sri Krishna touches upon both of them since his message is meant for people of all temperaments and inclinations. One cannot achieve freedom from karmic reactions by merely abstaining from work, nor can one attain perfection of knowledge by mere physical renunciation. The first line of this verse refers to the Karm Yogi, follower of the discipline of work, and the second line refers to the Sankhya Yogi, follower of the discipline of knowledge. In the first line, Sri Krishna says that mere abstinence from work does not result in a state of freedom from karmic reactions. The mind continues to engage in fruitive thoughts, and since mental work is also a form of karma, it binds one in karmic reactions just as physical work does. A true Karm Yogi must learn to work without any attachment to the fruits of actions. This requires cultivation of knowledge in the intellect. Hence, philosophic knowledge is also necessary for success in Karm Yoga. In the second line, Sri Krishna declares that the Sankhya Yogi cannot attain the state of knowledge merely by renouncing the world and becoming a monk. One may give up the physical objects of the senses, but true knowledge cannot awaken as long as the mind remains impure. The mind has a tendency to repeat its previous thoughts. Such repetition creates a channel within the mind, and new thoughts flow irresistibly in the same direction. Out of previous habit, the materially contaminated mind keeps running in the direction of anxiety, stress, fear, hatred, envy, attachment, and the whole gamut of material emotions. Thus, realized knowledge will not appear in an impure heart by mere physical renunciation. It must be accompanied by congruent action that purifies the mind and intellect. Therefore, action is also necessary for success in Sankhya Yoga. It is said that devotion without philosophy is sentimentality, and philosophy without devotion is intellectual speculation. Action and knowledge are necessary in both Karm Yoga and Sankhya Yoga. It is only their proportion that varies, creating the difference between the two paths. There is no one who can remain without action even for a moment. Indeed, all beings are compelled to act by their qualities born of material nature, the three guas. Some people think that action refers only to professional work, and not to daily activities such as eating, drinking, sleeping, waking and thinking. So when they renounce their profession, they think they are not performing actions. But Sri Krishna considers all activities performed with the body, mind, and tongue as actions. Hence, he tells Arjun that complete inactivity is impossible even for a moment. If we simply sit down, it is an activity. If we lie down, that is also an activity. If we fall asleep, the mind is still engaged in dreaming. Even in deep sleep, the heart and other bodily organs are functioning. Thus, Sri Krishna declares that for human beings, inactivity is an impossible state to reach, since the body-mind-intellect mechanism is compelled by its own makeup of the three guas, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, to perform work in the world. The Harmad Bhavatam contains a similar verse. Nobody can remain inactive for even a moment. Everyone is forced to act by their modes of nature. Those who restrain the external organs of action, while continuing to dwell on sense objects in the mind, certainly delude themselves and are to be called hypocrites. Attracted by the lure of an ascetic life, people often renounce their work, only to discover later that their renunciation is not accompanied by an equal amount of mental and intellectual withdrawal from the sensual fields. This creates a situation of hypocrisy where one displays an external show of religiosity while internally living a life of ignoble sentiments and base motives. Hence, it is better to face the struggles of the world as a Karm Yogi than to lead the life of a false ascetic. Running away from the problems of life by prematurely taking sanis is not the way forward in the journey of the evolution of the soul. Saint Kabir stated sarcastically, "O ascetic yogi, you have donned the ochre robes. But you have ignored dyeing your mind with the color of renunciation. You have grown long locks of hair and smeared ash on your body as a sign of detachment. But without the internal devotion, the external beard you have sprouted only makes you resemble a goat. Sri Krishna states in this verse that people who externally renounce the objects of the senses while continuing to dwell upon them in the mind are hypocrites, and they delude themselves. The Puranas relate the story of two brothers, Tavrit and Suvrit, to illustrate this point. The brothers were walking from their house to hear the Harmad Bhavatam discourse at the temple. On the way, it began raining heavily, so they ran into the nearest building for shelter. To their dismay, they found themselves in a brothel, where women of disrepute were dancing to entertain their guests. Tavrit, the elder brother, was appalled and walked out into the rain to continue to the temple. The younger brother, Suvrit, felt no harm in sitting there for a while to escape getting wet in the rain. Tavrit reached the temple and sat for the discourse. But in his mind he became remorseful. Oh, how boring this is. I made a dreadful mistake. I should have remained at the brothel. My brother must be enjoying himself greatly in revelry there. Suvrit, on the other hand, started thinking, why did I remain in this house of sin? My brother is so holy. He is bathing his intellect in the knowledge of the Bhavatam. I too should have braved the rain and reached there. After all, I am not made of salt that I would have melted in a little bit of rain. When the rain stopped, both started out in the direction of the other. The moment they met, lightning struck them and they both died on the spot. The Yamdoots, servants of the god of death, came to take Tavrit to hell. Tavrit complained, I think you have made a mistake. I am Tavrit. It was my brother who was sitting at the brothel a little while ago. You should be taking him to hell. The Yamdoots replied, we have made no mistake. He was sitting there to avoid the rain, but in his mind he was longing to be at the Bhagavatam discourse. On the other hand, while you were sitting and hearing the discourse, your mind was yearning to be at the brothel. Tavrit was doing exactly what Sri Krishna declares in this verse. He had externally renounced the objects of the senses, but was dwelling upon them in the mind. This was the improper kind of renunciation. The next verse states the proper kind of renunciation. But those Karm Yogis who control their knowledge senses with the mind, O Arjun, and engage the working senses in working without attachment, are certainly superior. The word Karm Yog has been used in this verse. It consists of two main concepts: Karm, occupational duties, and Yog, union with God. Hence, a Karm Yogi is one who performs worldly duties while keeping the mind attached to God. Such a Karm Yogi is not bound by karma even while performing all kinds of works. This is because what binds one to the law of karma is not actions, but the attachment to the fruits of those actions. And a Karm Yogi has no attachment to the fruits of action. On the other hand, a false renunciant renounces action, but does not forsake attachment, and thus remains bound in the law of karma. Sri Krishna says here that a person in household life who practices Karm Yoga is superior to the false renunciant who continues to dwell on the objects of the senses in the mind. Jagat Guru Sri Kripaluji Maharaj contrasts these two situations very beautifully. When one works in the world with the body, but keeps the mind attached to God, know it to be Karm Yoga. When one engages in spirituality with the body, but keeps the mind attached to the world, know it to be hypocrisy. You should thus perform your prescribed Vedic duties, since action is superior to inaction. By ceasing activity, even your bodily maintenance will not be possible. Until the mind and intellect reach a state where they are absorbed in God consciousness, physical work performed in an attitude of duty is very beneficial for one's internal purification. Hence, the Vedas prescribe duties for humans to help them discipline their mind and senses. In fact, laziness is described as one of the biggest pitfalls on the spiritual path. Laziness is the greatest enemy of humans and is especially pernicious since it resides in their own body. Work is their most trustworthy friend and is a guarantee against downfall. Even the basic bodily activities like eating, bathing, and maintaining proper health require work. These obligatory actions are called Nityakam. To neglect these basic maintenance activities is not a sign of progress, but an indication of slothfulness, leading to emaciation and weakness of both body and mind. On the other hand, a cared for and nourished body is a positive adjunct on the road to spirituality. Thus, the state of inertia does not lend itself either to material or spiritual achievement. For the progress of our own soul, we should embrace the duties that help elevate and purify our mind and intellect. Work must be done as a yajna to the Supreme Lord, otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, for the satisfaction of God, perform your prescribed duties without being attached to the results. A knife in the hands of a robber is a weapon for intimidation or committing murder, but in the hands of a surgeon is an invaluable instrument used for saving people's lives. The knife in itself is neither murderous nor benedictory. Its effect is determined by how it is used. As Shakespeare said, "For there is nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so." Similarly, work in itself is neither good nor bad. Depending upon the state of the mind, it can be either binding or elevating. Work done for the enjoyment of one's senses and the gratification of one's pride is the cause of bondage in the material world, while work performed as yajna, sacrifice, for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord liberates one from the bonds of Maya and attracts divine grace. Since it is our nature to perform actions, we are forced to work in one of the two modes. We cannot remain without working for even a moment, as our mind cannot remain still. If we do not perform actions as a sacrifice to God, we will be forced to work to gratify our mind and senses. Instead, when we perform work as a sacrifice, we then look upon the whole world and everything in it as belonging to God, and therefore meant for utilization in His service. A beautiful ideal for this was established by King Raghu, the ancestor of Lord Ram. Raghu performed the Vishwajit sacrifice, which requires donating all of one's possessions in charity. Raghu performed the Vishwajit yajna with the thought that just as clouds gather water from the earth, not for their enjoyment, but to shower it back upon the earth, similarly, all he possessed as a king had been gathered from the public in taxes, not for his pleasure, but for the pleasure of God. So he decided to use his wealth to please God by serving his citizens with it. After the yajna, Raghu donated all his possessions to his citizens. Then, donning the rags of a beggar and holding an earthen pot, he went out to beg for his meal. While resting under a tree, he heard a group of people discussing, "Our king is so benevolent. He has given away everything in charity." Raghu was pained on hearing his praise and spoke out, "What are you discussing?" They answered, "We are praising our king. There is nobody in the world as charitable as him." Raghu retorted, "Do not ever say that again. Raghu has given nothing." They said, "What kind of person are you who are criticizing our king? Everyone knows that Raghu has donated everything he owned." Raghu replied, "Go and ask your king that when he came into this world, did he possess anything? He was born empty-handed, is it not? Then what was his that he has given away?" This is the spirit of Karm Yog, in which we see the whole world as belonging to God, and hence meant for the satisfaction of God. We then perform our duties not for gratifying our mind and senses, but for the pleasure of God. Lord Vishnu instructed the Prachetas in this fashion. The perfect Karm Yogis, even while fulfilling their household duties, perform all their works as yajna to me, knowing me to be the enjoyer of all activities. They spend whatever free time they have in hearing and chanting my glories. Such people, though living in the world, never get bound by their actions. In the beginning of creation, Brahma created humankind along with duties and said, "Prosper in the performance of these yajnas, sacrifices, for they shall bestow upon you all you wish to achieve." All the elements of nature are integral parts of the system of God's creation. All the parts of the system naturally draw from and give back to the whole. The sun lends stability to the earth and provides heat and light necessary for life to exist. Earth creates food from its soil for our nourishment and also holds essential minerals in its womb for a civilized lifestyle. The air moves the life force in our body and enables transmission of sound energy. We humans too are an integral part of the entire system of God's creation. The air that we breathe, the earth that we walk upon, the water that we drink, and the light that illumines our day are all gifts of creation to us. While we partake of these gifts to sustain our lives, we also have our duties toward the integral system. Sri Krishna says that we are obligated to participate with the creative force of nature by performing our prescribed duties in the service of God. That is the yajna he expects from us. Consider the example of a hand. It is an integral part of the body. It receives its nourishment, blood, oxygen, nutrients, etc. from the body, and in turn, it performs necessary functions for the body. If the hand looks on this service as burdensome and decides to get severed from the body, it cannot sustain itself for even a few minutes. It is in the performance of its yajna toward the body that the self-interest of the hand is also fulfilled. Similarly, we individual souls are tiny parts of the Supreme Soul, and we all have our role to play in the grand scheme of things. When we perform our yajna toward Him, our self-interest is naturally satiated. Generally, the term yajna refers to fire sacrifice. In the Bhagavad Gita, yajna includes all the prescribed actions laid down in the scriptures when they are done as an offering to the Supreme. By your sacrifices, the celestial gods will be pleased, and by cooperation between humans and the celestial gods, great prosperity will reign for all. The celestial gods, or devats, are in charge of the administration of the universe. The Supreme Lord does His work of managing the universe through them. These devats live within this material universe, in the higher planes of existence called Swarg, or the celestial abodes. The devats are not God, they are souls like us. They occupy specific posts in the affairs of running the world. Consider the federal government of a country. There is a Secretary of State, a Secretary of the Treasury, a Secretary of Defense, Attorney General, and so on. These are posts, and chosen people occupy those posts for a limited tenure. At the end of the tenure, the government changes and all the post holders change too. Similarly, in administering the affairs of the world, there are posts such as Agni Dev, the god of fire, Vyu Dev, the god of the wind, Varuna Dev, the god of the ocean, Indra Dev, the king of the celestial gods, etc. Souls selected by virtue of their deeds in past lives occupy these seats for a fixed number of ages and administer the affairs of the universe. These are the devats, celestial gods. The Vedas mention various ceremonies and processes for the satisfaction of the celestial gods, and in turn these devats bestow material prosperity. However, when we perform our yajna for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord, the celestial gods are automatically appeased. Just as when we water the root of a tree, the water inevitably reaches its flowers, fruits, leaves, branches, and twigs. The Skand Pur states, by worshipping the Supreme Lord Sri Vishnu, we automatically worship all the celestial gods, since they all derive their power from Him. Thus, the performance of yajna is naturally pleasing to the devats, who then create prosperity for living beings by favorably adjusting the elements of material nature. The celestial gods, being satisfied by the performance of sacrifice, will grant you all the desired necessities of life. But those who enjoy what is given to them, without making offerings in return, are verily thieves. As administrators of various processes of the universe, the devats provide us with rain, wind, crops, vegetation, minerals, fertile soil, etc. We human beings are indebted to them for all that we receive from them. The devats perform their duty and expect us to perform our duty in the proper consciousness too. Since these celestial gods are all servants of the Supreme Lord, they become pleased when someone performs a sacrifice for Him, and in turn assists such a soul by creating favorable material conditions. Thus, it is said that when we strongly resolve to serve God, the universe begins to cooperate with us. However, if we begin looking upon the gifts of nature not as means of serving the Lord but as objects of our own enjoyment, Sri Krishna calls it a thieving mentality. Often people ask the question, I lead a virtuous life, I do not harm anyone, nor do I steal anything. But I do not believe in worshipping God, nor do I believe in Him. Am I doing anything wrong? This question is answered in the above verse. Such persons may not be doing anything wrong in the eyes of humans, but they are thieves in the eyes of God. Let us say, we walk into someone's house, and without recognizing the owner, we sit on the sofa, eat from the refrigerator, and use the restroom. We may claim that we are not doing anything wrong, but we will be considered thieves in the eyes of the law, because the house does not belong to us. Similarly, the world that we live in was made by God, and everything in it belongs to Him. If we utilize His creation for our pleasure, without acknowledging His dominion over it, from the divine perspective, we are certainly committing theft. The famous king in Indian history, Chandragupta, asked Chanakya Pandit, his guru, according to the Vedic scriptures, what is the position of the king vis-a-vis his subjects? Chanakya Pandit replied, the king is the servant of the subjects and nothing else. His God-given duty is to help the citizens of his kingdom progress in their journey toward God realization. Whether one is a king, a business person, a farmer, or a worker, each person, as an integral member of God's world, is expected to do his or her duty as a service to the Supreme. The spiritually minded, who eat food that is first offered in sacrifice, are released from all kinds of sin. Others, who cook food for their own enjoyment, verily eat only sin. In the Vedic tradition, food is cooked with the consciousness that the meal is for the pleasure of God. A portion of the food items is then put in a plate and a verbal or mental prayer is made for the Lord to come and eat it. After the offering, the food in the plate is considered prasth, grace of God. All the food in the plate and the pots is then accepted as God's grace and eaten in that consciousness. Other religious traditions follow similar customs. Christianity has the sacrament of the Eucharist, where bread and wine are consecrated and then partaken. Sri Krishna states in this verse that eating prasth, food that is first offered as sacrifice to God, releases one from sin, while those who eat food without offering commit sin. The question may arise whether we can offer non-vegetarian items to God and then accept the remnants as His prasth. The answer to this question is that the Vedas prescribe a vegetarian diet for humans, which includes grains, pulses and beans, vegetables, fruits, dairy products, etc. Apart from the Vedic culture, many spiritually evolved souls in the history of all cultures around the world also rejected a non-vegetarian diet that makes the stomach a graveyard for animals. Even though many of them were born in meat-eating families, they gravitated to a vegetarian lifestyle as they advanced on the path of spirituality. Here are quotations from some famous thinkers and personalities advocating vegetarianism. To avoid causing terror to living beings, let the disciple refrain from eating meat. The food of the wise is that which is consumed by the sthus. It does not consist of meat. The Buddha. If you declare that you are naturally designed for such a diet, then first kill for yourself what you want to eat. Do it, however, only through your own resources, unaided by cleaver or cudgel or any kind of axe. The Roman Plutarch, in the essay on eating flesh, as long as men massacre animals, they will kill each other. Indeed, he who sows the seeds of murder and pain cannot reap joy and love. Pythagoras. Truly man is the king of beasts, for his brutality exceeds them. We live by the death of others. We are burial places. I have since an early age abjured the use of meat. Leonardo da Vinci. Non-violence leads to the highest ethics, which is the goal of all evolution. Until we stop harming all living beings, we are all savages. Thomas Edison. Flesh eating is simply immoral, as it involves the performance of an act which is contrary to moral feeling, killing. Leo Tolstoy. It may indeed be doubted whether butcher's meat is anywhere a necessary of life. Decency nowhere requires that any man should eat butcher's meat. Adam Smith. I look my age. It is the other people who look older than they are. What can you expect from people who eat corpses? George Bernard Shaw. A dead cow or sheep lying in a pasture is recognized as carrion. The same sort of carcass dressed and hung up in a butcher's stall passes as food. J. H. Kellogg. It is my view that the vegetarian manner of living, by its purely physical effect on the human temperament, would most beneficially influence the lot of mankind. Albert Einstein. I do feel that spiritual progress does demand at some stage that we should cease to kill our fellow creatures for the satisfaction of our bodily wants. Mahatma Gandhi. In this verse, Sri Krishna goes further and says that even vegetation contains life. And if we eat it for our own sense enjoyment, we get bound in the karmic reactions of destroying life. The word used in the verse is tmakrat, meaning for one's individual pleasure. However, if we eat food as remnants of yajna offered to God, then the consciousness changes. We then look upon our body as the property of God, which has been put under our care for His service. And we partake of permitted food as His grace, with the intention that it will nourish the body. In this sentiment, the entire process is consecrated to the divine. Bharat Muni states, violence is caused unknowingly to living entities in the process of cooking by the use of the pestle, fire, grinding instruments, water pot, and broom. Those who cook food for themselves become implicated in the sin. But yajna nullifies the sinful reactions. All living beings subsist on food, and food is produced by rains. Rains come from the performance of sacrifice, and sacrifice is produced by the performance of prescribed duties. Here, Lord Krishna is describing the cycle of nature. Rain begets grains. Grains are eaten and transformed into blood. From blood, semen is created. Semen is the seed from which the human body is created. Human beings perform yajnas, and these propitiate the celestial gods, who then cause rains, and so the cycle continues. The duties for human beings are described in the Vedas, and the Vedas are manifested by God Himself. Therefore, the all-pervading Lord is eternally present in acts of sacrifice. The Vedas emanated from the breath of God. The four Vedas, Ig Veda, Yajur Veda, Asame Veda, Atharva Veda, all emanated from the breath of the Supreme Divine Personality. In these eternal Vedas, the duties of humans have been laid down by God Himself. These duties have been planned in such a way that through their performance, materially engrossed persons may gradually learn to control their desires and slowly elevate themselves from the mode of ignorance to the mode of passion, and from the mode of passion to the mode of goodness. These duties are enjoined to be dedicated to Him as yajna. Hence, duties consecrated as sacrifice to God verily become godly, of the nature of God, and non-different from Him. The Tantra essay with Macronar states yajna to be the Supreme Divine Lord Himself. In the Bhagavatam, 19th November, 1939, Sri Krishna declares to Uddhav, Yajno ha Bhagvatama, V11, I, the son of Vasudev, am yajna. The Vedas state, Yajno vai Vihu, V12, yajna is indeed Lord Vishnu Himself. Reiterating this principle, Sri Krishna says in this verse that God is eternally present in the act of sacrifice. O Parth, those who do not accept their responsibility in the cycle of sacrifice established by the Vedas are sinful. They live only for the delight of their senses. Indeed, their lives are in vain. Chakra, or cycle, means an ordered series of events. The cycle from grains to rains has been described in verse 3.14. All members of this universal wheel of action perform their duties and contribute to its smooth rotation. Since we also partake of the fruits of this natural cycle, we too must do our bounden duty in the chain. We humans are the only ones in this chain who have been bestowed with the ability to choose our actions by our own free will. We can thus either contribute to the harmony of the cycle or bring about discord in the smooth running of this cosmic mechanism. When the majority of the people of human society accept their responsibility to live as integral parts of the universal system, material prosperity abounds and spiritual growth is engendered. Such periods become golden eras in the social and cultural history of humankind. Conversely, when a major section of humankind begins to violate the universal system and rejects its responsibility as an integral part of the cosmic system, then material nature begins to punish, and peace and prosperity become scarce. The wheel of nature has been set up by God for disciplining, training, and elevating all living beings of varying levels of consciousness. Sri Krishna explains to Arjun that those who do not perform the yajna enjoined of them become slaves of their senses and lead a sinful existence. Thus, they live in vain. But persons conforming to the divine law become pure at heart and free from material contamination. But those who rejoice in the self, who are illumined and fully satisfied in the self, for them there is no duty. Only those who have given up desires for external objects can rejoice and be satisfied in the self. The root of bondage is our material desires. This should happen, that should not happen. Sri Krishna explains a little further ahead in this chapter, in verse 3.37, that desire is the cause of all sins. Consequently, it must be renounced. As explained previously in the purport of verse 2.64, it must be borne in mind that whenever Sri Krishna says we should give up desire, he refers to material desires, and not to the aspirations for spiritual progress or the desire to realize God. However, why do material desires arise in the first place? When we identify the self with the body, we identify with the yearnings of the body and mind as the desires of the self, and these send us spinning into the realm of Maya. Sage Tulsidas explains, when the soul separated itself from God, the material energy covered it in an illusion. By virtue of that illusion, it began thinking of itself as the body. And ever since, in forgetfulness of the self, it has been experiencing immense misery. Those who are illumined realize that the self is not material in nature, but divine and hence imperishable. The perishable objects of the world can never fulfill the thirst of the imperishable soul, and therefore it is a folly to hanker after those sense objects. Thus, self-illumined souls learn to unite their consciousness with God and experience His infinite bliss within them. The karma, duties, prescribed for the materially conditioned souls are no longer applicable to such illumined souls because they have already attained the goal of all such karma. For example, as long as one is a college student, one is obliged to follow the rules of the university. But for one who has graduated and earned the degree, the rules now become irrelevant. For such liberated souls, it is said, Brahmvid Shruti MRDHN V14, those who have united themselves with God now walk on the head of the Vedas, i.e. they have no need to follow the rules of the Vedas any longer. The goal of the Vedas is to help unite the soul with God. Once the soul becomes God-realized, the rules of the Vedas, which help the soul to reach that destination, now no longer apply. The soul has transcended their area of jurisdiction. For example, a Pandit unites a man and woman in wedlock by performing the marriage ceremony. Once the ceremony is over, he says, "You are now husband and wife, I am leaving." His task is over. If the wife says, "Punditji, the vows you made us take during the marriage ceremony are not being followed by my husband," the Pandit will reply, "That is not my area of expertise. My duty was to get you both united in marriage and that work is over." Similarly, the Vedas are there to help unite the self with the Supreme Self. When God realization takes place, the task of the Vedas is over. Such an enlightened soul is no longer obliged to perform the Vedic duties. Such self-realized souls have nothing to gain or lose either in discharging or renouncing their duties. Nor do they need to depend on other living beings to fulfill their self-interest. These self-realized personalities are situated on the transcendental platform of the soul. Their every activity is transcendental, in service of God. So the duties prescribed for worldly people at the bodily level, in accordance with the Varharam Dharma, no longer apply to them. Here, the distinction needs to be made between karma and bhakti. Previously, Sri Krishna was talking about karma, or prescribed worldly duties, and saying that they must be done as an offering to God. This was necessary to purify the mind, helping it rise above worldly contamination. But self-realized souls have already reached absorption in God and developed purity of mind. These transcendentalists are directly engaged in bhakti, or pure spiritual activities, such as meditation, worship, kirtan, service to the Guru, etc. If such souls reject their worldly duties, it is not considered a sin. They may continue to perform worldly duties if they wish, but they are not obliged to do them. Historically, saints have been of two kinds. One, those like Prahlad, Dhruv, Ambarish, Prithu, and Vibhishan, who continued to discharge their worldly duties even after attaining the transcendental platform. These were the Karm Yogis. Externally, they were doing their duties with their body, while internally their minds were attached to God. 2. Those like Shankaracharya, Mandvacharya, Ramanujacharya, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who rejected their worldly duties and accepted the renounced order of life. These were the Karm Sanis, who were both internally and externally, with both body and mind, engaged only in devotion to God. In this verse, Sri Krishna tells Arjun that both options exist for the self-realized sage. Now, he states this in the next verse, which of these he recommends to Arjun. Therefore, giving up attachment, perform actions as a matter of duty, because by working without being attached to the fruits, one attains the supreme. From verses 3.8 to 3.16, Sri Krishna strongly urged those who have not yet reached the transcendental platform to perform their prescribed duties. In verses 3.17 and 3.18, he stated that the transcendentalist is not obliged to perform prescribed duties. So, what path is more suitable for Arjun? Sri Krishna's recommendation for him is to be a Karm Yogi and not take Karm Sanis. He explains the reason for this in verses 3.20 to 3.6. By performing their prescribed duties, King Janak and others attained perfection. You should also perform your duties to set an example for the good of the world. Whatever actions great persons perform, common people follow. Whatever standards they set, all the world pursues. King Janak attained perfection through Karm Yog while discharging his kingly duties. Even after reaching the transcendental platform, he continued to do his worldly duties purely for the reason that it would set a good example for the world to follow. Many other saints did the same. Humanity is inspired by the ideals that they see in the lives of great people. Such leaders inspire society by their example and become shining beacons for the masses to follow. Leaders of society thus have a moral responsibility to set lofty examples for inspiring the rest of the population by their words, deeds, and character. When noble leaders are in the forefront, the rest of society naturally gets uplifted in morality, selflessness, and spiritual strength. But in times when there is a vacuum of principled leadership, the rest of society has no standards to pursue and slumps into self-centeredness, moral bankruptcy, and spiritual lassitude. Hence, great personalities should always act in an exemplary manner to set the standard for the world. Even though they themselves may have risen to the transcendental platform and may not need to perform prescribed Vedic duties, by doing so, they inspire others to perform prescribed Vedic actions. If a great leader of society becomes a Karm Sanis and renounces work, it sets an errant precedent for others. The leader may be at the transcendental platform and therefore eligible to renounce work and engage completely in spirituality. However, others in society use their example as an excuse for escapism to run away from their responsibilities. Such escapists cite the instances of the great Karm Sanis, such as Shankaracharya, Mandvacharya, Nimbarkacharya, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Following their lofty footsteps, these impostors also renounce worldly duties and take sanis, even though they have not yet attained the purity of mind required for it. In India, we find thousands of such sadhus. They copy the examples of the great sanis and don the ochre robes, without the concurrent internal enlightenment and bliss. Though externally renounced, their nature forces them to seek happiness, and devoid of the divine bliss of God, they begin indulging in the lowly pleasure of intoxication. Thus, they slip even below the level of people in household life, as stated in the following verse. Sage Tulsidas says, one who renounces worldly duties without the concurrent internal enlightenment with divine knowledge treads the quick path to hell. Instead, if a great leader is a Karm Yogi, at least the followers will continue to do their karma and dutifully perform their responsibilities. This will help them learn to discipline their mind and senses, and slowly rise to the transcendental platform. Hence, to present an example for society to follow, Sri Krishna suggests that Arjun should practice Karm Yog. He now gives his own example to illustrate the above point. There is no duty for me to do in all the three worlds, O Parth, nor do I have anything to gain or attain. Yet, I am engaged in prescribed duties. The reason why we all work is because we need something. We are all tiny parts of God, who is an ocean of bliss, and hence we all seek bliss. Since we have not attained perfect bliss as yet, we feel dissatisfied and incomplete. So whatever we do is for the sake of attaining bliss. However, bliss is one of God's energies and He alone possesses it to the infinite extent. He is perfect and complete in Himself and has no need of anything outside of Himself. Thus, He is also called Evidmekronti Evidmekronare Vidmekronem, one who rejoices in the self, T Emerat, one who is attracted to his or her own self, and T Emekara, one who performs divine pastimes with his or her own self. If such a personality does work, there can be only one reason for it. It will not be for oneself, rather for the welfare of others. Thus, Sri Krishna tells Arjun that although in his personal form as Sri Krishna, he has no duty to perform in the universe, yet he works for the welfare of others. He next explains the welfare that is accomplished when he works. For if I did not carefully perform the prescribed duties, O Parth, all men would follow my path in all respects. In his divine pastimes on the earth, Sri Krishna was playing the role of a king and a great leader. He appeared in the material world as the son of King Vasudeva from the Vrishni dynasty, the foremost of the righteous. If Lord Krishna did not perform prescribed Vedic activities, then so many lesser personalities would follow in his footsteps, thinking that violating them was the standard practice. Lord Krishna states that he would be at fault for leading mankind astray. If I cease to perform prescribed actions, all these worlds would perish. I would be responsible for the pandemonium that would prevail and would thereby destroy the peace of the human race. When Sri Krishna appeared on the earth, seemingly as a human being, he conducted himself in all ways and manners appropriate for his position in society as a member of the royal warrior class. If he had acted otherwise, other human beings would begin to imitate him, thinking that they must copy the conduct of the worthy son of the righteous King Vasudeva. Had Sri Krishna failed to perform Vedic duties, human beings following his example would be led away from the discipline of karma into a state of chaos. This would have been a very serious offense and Lord Krishna would be considered at fault. Thus, he explains to Arjun that if he did not fulfill his occupational duties, it would cause pandemonium in society. Similarly, Arjun was world famous for being undefeated in battle and was the brother of the virtuous King Yudhishthir. If Arjun refused to fulfill his duty to protect Dharma, then many other worthy and noble warriors could follow his example and also renounce their prescribed duty of protecting righteousness. This would bring destruction to the world balance and the rout of innocent and virtuous people. Thus, for the benefit of the entire human race and the welfare of the world, Sri Krishna coaxed Arjun not to neglect performing his prescribed Vedic activities. As ignorant people perform their duties with attachment to the results, O scion of Bharat, so should the wise act without attachment, for the sake of leading people on the right path. Previously, in verse 3.20, Sri Krishna had used the expression Loka Sagraham Evapi Sampashyan, meaning with a view to the welfare of the masses. In this verse, the expression Loka Sagraham Chikrahu means wishing the welfare of the world. Thus, Sri Krishna again emphasizes that the wise should always act for the benefit of humankind. Also, in this verse the expression Sakta Vidwansa has been used for people who are as yet in bodily consciousness and hence attached to worldly pleasures, but who have full faith in the Vedic rituals sanctioned by the scriptures. They are called ignorant because though they have bookish knowledge of the scriptures, they do not comprehend the final goal of God realization. Such ignorant people perform their duty scrupulously according to the ordinance of the scriptures, without indolence or doubt. They have firm faith that the performance of Vedic duties and rituals will bring the material rewards they desire. If the faith of such people in rituals is broken, Without their having developed faith in the higher principle of devotion, they will have nowhere to go. The Harmad Bhavatam states, one should continue to perform karma as long as one has not developed renunciation from the sense objects and attachment to God. Sri Krishna urges Arjun that just as ignorant people faithfully perform ritualistic duties, so also the wise should perform their works dutifully, not for material rewards, but for setting an ideal for the rest of society. Besides, the particular situation in which Arjun finds himself is a dharma yudh, war of righteousness. Thus, for the welfare of society, Arjun should perform his duty as a warrior. The wise should not create discord in the intellects of ignorant people who are attached to fruitive actions by inducing them to stop work. Rather, by performing their duties in an enlightened manner, they should inspire the ignorant also to do their prescribed duties. Great persons have greater responsibility because common people follow them. So Sri Krishna urges that wise people should not perform any actions or make any utterances that lead the ignorant toward downfall. It may be argued that if the wise feel compassion for the ignorant, they should give them the highest knowledge, the knowledge of God realization. Lord Krishna neutralized this argument by stating Na buddhi bheda janayat, meaning the ignorant should not be asked to abandon duties by giving superior instructions they are not qualified to understand. Usually, people in material consciousness consider only two options. Either they are willing to work hard for fruitive results or they wish to give up all exertions on the plea that all works are laborious, painful, and wrought with evil. Between these, working for results is far superior to the escapist approach. Hence, the spiritually wise in Vedic knowledge should inspire the ignorant to perform their duties with attentiveness and care. If the minds of the ignorant become disturbed and unsettled, then they may lose faith in working altogether. And with action stopped and knowledge not arising, the ignorant will lose out from both sides. If both the ignorant and the wise perform Vedic actions, then what is the difference between them? Apprehending such a question, Sri Krishna explains this in the next two verses. All activities are carried out by the three modes of material nature. But in ignorance, the soul, deluded by false identification with the body, thinks of itself as the doer. We can see that the natural phenomena of the world are not directed by us, but are performed by Prakriti or Mother Nature. Now, for the actions of our own body, we usually divide them into two categories. One, natural biological functions, such as digestion, blood circulation, heartbeat, etc., which we do not consciously execute but which occur naturally. Two, actions such as speaking, hearing, walking, sleeping, working, etc. that we think we perform. Both these categories of works are performed by the mind-body senses mechanism. All the parts of this mechanism are made from Prakriti or the material energy, which consists of the three modes: Gwas, goodness, Sattva, passion, Rajas, and ignorance, Tamas. Just as waves are not separate from the ocean, but a part of it, similarly the body is a part of Mother Nature from which it is created. Hence, material energy is the doer of everything. Why then does the soul perceive itself to be doing activities? The reason is that, in the grip of the unforgiving ego, the soul falsely identifies itself with the body. Hence, it remains under the illusion of doership. Let us say there are two trains standing side by side on the railway platform, and a passenger on one train fixes his gaze on the other. When the second train moves, it seems that the first is moving. Likewise, the immobile soul identifies with the mobility of Prakriti. Thus, it perceives itself as the doer of actions. The moment the soul eliminates the ego and surrenders to the will of God, it realizes itself as the non-doer. One may question that if the soul is truly the non-doer, then why is it implicated in law of karma for actions performed by the body? The reason is that the soul does not itself perform actions, but it does direct the actions of the senses, mind, intellect. For example, a chariot driver does not pull the chariot himself, but he does direct the horses. Now, if there is any accident, it is not the horses that are blamed, but the driver who is directing them. Similarly, The soul is held responsible for the actions of the mind-body mechanism because the senses mind intellect work on receiving inspiration from the soul. O mighty armed Arjun, illumined persons distinguish the soul as distinct from guas and karmas. They perceive that it is only the guas, in the shape of the senses, mind, and others, that move among the guas, in the shape of the objects of perception, and thus they do not get entangled in them. The previous verse mentioned that the ahankara vimham, those who are bewildered by the ego and misidentify themselves with the body, think themselves to be the doers. This verse talks about the tattvavit, or the knowers of the truth. Having thus abolished the ego, they are free from bodily identifications and are able to discern their spiritual identity distinct from the corporeal body. Hence, they are not beguiled into thinking of themselves as the doers of their material actions, and instead they attribute every activity to the movements of the three guas. Such God-realized saints say, Jo karai so hari karai, hota kabar kabar, V17, God is doing everything, but people are thinking that I am doing. Those who are deluded by the operation of the guas become attached to the results of their actions. But the wise who understand these truths should not unsettle such ignorant people who know very little. The question may be raised that if soul is distinct from the guas and their activities, then why are the ignorant attached to sense objects? Sri Krishna explains in this verse that they become bewildered by the guas of the material energy and think themselves to be the doers. Infatuated by the three modes of material nature, they work for the express purpose of being able to enjoy sensual and mental delights. They are unable to perform actions as a matter of duty without desiring rewards. However, the kitsanavit, persons with knowledge, should not disturb the minds of the akitsanavit, persons without knowledge. This means that the wise should not force their thoughts onto ignorant persons by saying, "You are the soul, not the body, and hence karma is meaningless. Give it up." Rather, they should instruct the ignorant to perform their respective karma and slowly help them rise above attachment. In this way, after presenting the distinctions between those who are spiritually wise and those who are ignorant, Sri Krishna gives the sober caution not to unsettle the minds of the ignorant. Performing all works as an offering unto me, constantly meditate on me as the Supreme. Become free from desire and selfishness, and with your mental grief departed, fight. In his typical style, Sri Krishna expounds on a topic and then finally presents the summary. The words Adhyatma Chetas mean, with the thoughts resting on God. Sannyasya means, renouncing all activities that are not dedicated to Him. Nid means, without hankering for the results of the actions. The consciousness of dedicating all actions to God requires forsaking claim to proprietorship and renouncing all desire for personal gain, hankering, and lamentation. The summary of the instructions in the previous verses is that one should very faithfully reflect, "My soul is a tiny part of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. He is the enjoyer and master of all. All my works are meant for His pleasure. And thus, I should perform my duties in the spirit of yajna or sacrifice to Him. He supplies the energy by which I accomplish works of yajna. Thus, I should not take credit for any actions authored by me." Those who abide by these teachings of mine, with profound faith and free from envy, are released from the bondage of karma. Very beautifully, the Supreme Lord terms the Siddhant, principle, explained by him as Mata, opinion. An opinion is a personal view, while a principle is universal fact. Opinions can differ amongst teachers, but the principle is the same. Philosophers and teachers name their opinion as principle. But in the Gita, the Lord has named the principle explained by Him as opinion. By His example, He is teaching us humility and cordiality. Having given the call for action, Sri Krishna now points out the virtues of accepting the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita with faith and following them in one's life. Our prerogative as humans is to know the truth and then modify our lives accordingly. In this way, our mental fever of lust, anger, greed, envy, illusion, etc. gets pacified. In the previous verse, Sri Krishna had clearly explained to Arjun to offer all works to him. But he knows that this statement can cause ridicule from those who have no belief in God and rebuke from those who are envious of him. So, he now emphasizes the need for accepting the teachings with conviction. He says that by faithfully following these teachings, one becomes free from the bondage of karma. But what happens to those who are faithless? Their position is explained next. But those who find faults with my teachings, being bereft of knowledge and devoid of discrimination, they disregard these principles and bring about their own ruin. The teachings presented by Sri Krishna are perfect for our eternal welfare. However, our material intellect has innumerable imperfections, and so we are not always able to comprehend the sublimity of his teachings or appreciate their benefits. If we could, what would be the difference between us tiny souls and the Supreme Divine Personality? Thus, faith becomes a necessary ingredient for accepting the divine teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. Wherever our intellect is unable to comprehend, rather than finding fault with the teachings, we must submit our intellect. Sri Krishna has said it. There must be veracity in it, which I cannot understand at present. Let me accept it for now and engage in spiritual sthan. I will be able to comprehend it in future when I progress in spirituality through sthan. This attitude is called hrad or faith. Hrad is strong faith in the words of the Guru and the scriptures. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained it similarly. Hrad shabde vyavasa kahe sudiha nishchaya. Chaitanya Charitmrit, Madhya Leela, 22.62 V19. The word hrad means strong faith in God and Guru, even though we may not comprehend their message at present. The British poet Alfred Tennyson said, "By faith alone, embrace believing where we cannot prove." So, hrad means earnestly digesting the comprehensible portions of the Bhagavad Gita and also accepting the abstruse portions with the hope that they will become comprehensible in future. However, one of the persistent defects of the material intellect is pride. Due to pride, whatever the intellect cannot comprehend at present, it often rejects as incorrect. Though Sri Krishna's teachings are presented by the omniscient Lord for the welfare of the souls, people still find fault in them, such as, why is God asking everything to be offered to him? Is he greedy? Is he an egotist that he asks Arjun to worship him? Sri Krishna says that such people are achetasa, or devoid of discrimination, because they cannot distinguish between the pure and the impure, the righteous and the unrighteous, the creator and the created, the supreme master and the servant. Such people bring about their own ruin because they reject the path to eternal salvation and keep rotating in the cycle of life and death. Even wise people act according to their natures, for all living beings are propelled by their natural tendencies. What will one gain by repression? Sri Krishna again comes back to the point about action being superior to inaction. Propelled by their natures, people are inclined to act in accordance with their individual modes. Even those who are theoretically learned carry with them the baggage of the sanskars, tendencies and impressions of endless past lives, the prabdh karma of this life, and the individual traits of their minds and intellects. They find it difficult to resist this force of habit and nature. If the Vedic scriptures instructed them to give up all works and engage in pure spirituality, it would create an unstable situation. Such artificial repression would be counterproductive. The proper and easier way for spiritual advancement is to utilize the immense force of habit and tendencies and dovetail it in the direction of God. We have to begin the spiritual ascent from where we stand, and doing so requires we have to first accept our present condition of what we are and then improve on it. We can see how even animals act according to their unique natures. Ants are such social creatures that they bring food for the community while forsaking it themselves, a quality that is difficult to find in human society. A cow has such intense attachment for its calf that the moment it goes out of its sight, the cow feels disturbed. Dogs display the virtue of loyalty to depths that cannot be matched by the best of humans. Similarly, we humans too are propelled by our natures. Since Arjun was a warrior by nature, Sri Krishna told him, if, motivated by pride, you think, I shall not fight, your decision will be in vain. Your own nature will compel you to fight. Bhagavad Gita 18.59, O Arjun, that action which out of delusion you do not wish to do, you will be driven to do it by your own inclination, born of your own material nature. Bhagavad Gita 18.60, that nature should be sublimated by shifting the goal from worldly enjoyment to God realization and performing our prescribed duty without attachment and aversion in the spirit of service to God. The senses naturally experience attachment and aversion to the sense objects, but do not be controlled by them, for they are veilers and foes. Although Sri Krishna previously emphasized that the mind and senses are propelled by their natural tendencies, he now opens up the possibility of harnessing them. As long as we have the material body, for its maintenance, we have to utilize the objects of the senses. Sri Krishna is not asking us to stop consuming what is necessary, but to practice eradicating attachment and aversion. Definitely Sanskars, past life tendencies, do have a deep-rooted influence on all living beings, but if we practice the method taught in the Bhagavad Gita, we can succeed in correcting the situation. The senses naturally run toward the sense objects and their mutual interaction creates sensations of pleasure and pain. For example, the taste buds experience joy in contact with delicious foods and distress in contact with bitter foods. The mind repeatedly contemplates the sensations of pleasure and pain which it associates with these objects. Thoughts of pleasure in the sense objects create attachment, while thoughts of pain create aversion. Sri Krishna tells Arjun to succumb neither to feelings of attachment nor aversion. In the discharge of our worldly duty, we will have to encounter all kinds of likable and unlikable situations. We must practice neither to yearn for the likable situations nor to avoid the unlikable situations. When we stop being slaves of both the likes and dislikes of the mind and senses, we will overcome our lower nature. And when we become indifferent to both pleasure and pain in the discharge of our duty, we will become truly free to act from our higher nature. It is far better to perform one's natural prescribed duty, though tinged with faults, than to perform another's prescribed duty, though perfectly. In fact, it is preferable to die in the discharge of one's duty than to follow the path of another, which is fraught with danger. In this verse, the word dharma has been used 4 times. Dharma is a word commonly used in Hinduism and Buddhism, but it is the most elusive word to translate into the English language. Terms like righteousness, good conduct, duty, noble quality, etc. only describe an aspect of its meaning. Dharma comes from the root word dhi, which means hara karane yogya, or responsibilities, duties, thoughts, and actions that are appropriate for us. For example, the dharma of the soul is to love God. It is like the central law of our being. The prefix swa means the self. Thus, swadharma is our personal dharma, which is the dharma applicable to our context, situation, maturity, and profession in life. This swadharma can change as our context in life changes and as we grow spiritually. By asking Arjun to follow his swadharma, Sri Krishna is telling him to follow his profession and not change it because someone else may be doing something else. It is more enjoyable to be ourselves than to pretend to be someone else. The duties born of our nature can be easily performed with stability of mind. The duties of others may seem attractive from a distance and we may think of switching, but that is a risky thing to do. If they conflict with our nature, they will create disharmony in our senses, mind, and intellect. This will be detrimental for our consciousness and will hinder our progress on the spiritual path. Sri Krishna emphasizes this point dramatically by saying that it is better to die in the faithful performance of one's duty than to be in the unnatural position of doing another's duty. Arjun asked, "Why is a person impelled to commit sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if by force, O descendant of Vrishni, Krishna?" Sri Krishna stated in the previous verse that one should not come under the influence of attraction and aversion. Arjun wishes to lead such a divine life, but finds the advice difficult to implement. So he asks Sri Krishna a question that is very realistic and representative of the human struggle. He says, "What force prevents us from reaching this high ideal? What makes one succumb to attachment and aversion? We all have a conscience that makes us feel remorseful while committing a sin. The conscience is grounded in the fact that God is the abode of virtue, and as his fragments, we all have an innate attraction for virtue and goodness. The goodness that is the nature of the soul gives rise to the voice of conscience. Thus, we cannot make the excuse that we did not know stealing, swindling, libel, extortion, murder, oppression, and corruption are sinful activities. We intuitively know these deeds to be sinful, and yet we commit such acts as if some strong force impels to do them. Arjun wishes to know what that strong force is. The Supreme Lord said, "It is lust alone, which is born of contact with the mode of passion and later transformed into anger. Know this as the sinful, all-devouring enemy in the world." The Vedas use the word K with macronym or lust, not only for sexual desires but also to include all desires for material enjoyment based on the bodily concept of the self. Thus, lust shows itself in many ways. The urge for money, physical cravings, craving for prestige, the drive for power, etc. This lust is only a perverted reflection of love for God, which is the inherent nature of every living being. When the soul associates with the material energy in the form of the body, its divine love for God is transformed into lust in association with the mode of passion. Since divine love is the highest power of God, its perversion in the material realm, which is lust, is also the most powerful force in worldly activities. Sri Krishna identifies this lust for worldly enjoyment as the cause of sin, as the malignant allure sitting within us. The mode of passion deludes the soul into believing that worldly objects will give satisfaction, and so one creates desires for acquiring them. When desire is satisfied, it gives birth to greed. When it is not satisfied, it gives rise to anger. One commits sins under the influence of all three: lust, greed, and anger. Greed is nothing but intensified desire, while anger is frustrated desire. Hence, Sri Krishna labels lust, or desire, as the root of all evil. Just as a fire is covered by smoke, a mirror is masked by dust, and an embryo is concealed by the womb, similarly one's knowledge gets shrouded by desire. Knowledge of what is right and what is wrong is called discrimination. This discrimination resides in the intellect. However, lust is such a formidable adversary that it clouds the discriminatory ability of the intellect. Sri Krishna gives 3 grades of examples to illustrate this principle. Fire, which is the source of light, gets covered by smoke. This partial obscuring is like the thin cloud that aesthetic desires create. A mirror, which is naturally reflective, gets obscured by dust. This semi-opacity is like the masking impact of rajasic desires on the intellect. And an embryo gets concealed in the womb. This complete obfuscation is like the consequence of massive desires subverting the power of discrimination. Similarly, in proportion to the grade of our desires, the spiritual knowledge we may have heard and read gets shrouded. There is a beautiful allegorical story to illustrate this point. A man used to take his evening walk by the side of a forest. One evening, he decided to walk in the forest instead. When he had walked a couple of miles, the sun began setting and the light started fading. He turned around to walk out of the forest, but to his dismay he found that animals had gathered on the other side. These ferocious animals started chasing him, and to escape from them, he ran deeper into the forest. While running, he found a witch standing in front of him with open arms to embrace him. To escape her, he turned direction and ran perpendicular to the animals and the witch. By then, it had become dark. Unable to see much, he ran over a ditch that was covered by vine hanging from a tree. He fell headlong, but his feet became entangled in the vine. As a result, he began hanging upside down above the ditch. After a few moments, he came to his senses and saw a snake sitting at the bottom of the ditch, waiting to bite him if he fell down. In the meantime, 2 mice appeared, one white and one black, and started nibbling at the branch from which the vine was hanging. To confound his problems, some wasps gathered and began stinging him on his face. In this precarious situation, it was found that the man was smiling. Philosophers gathered to ponder how he could smile in such a dire strait. They looked upwards and found a beehive, from which honey was dripping onto his tongue. He was licking the honey and thinking how pleasurable it was. He had forgotten the animals, the witch, the snake, the mice, and the wasps. The person in the story may seem insane to us. However, this tale depicts the condition of all humans under the influence of desire. The forest in which the man was walking represents the material world in which we live, where there is danger at every step. The animals that chased him represent diseases that begin to appear in life and continue harassing us until death. The witch represented old age that is waiting to embrace us with the passage of time. The snake at the bottom of the pit is like the inevitable death that awaits us all. The white and black mice that were nibbling on the branch represent day and night, which are steadily reducing our life and bringing us closer to death. The wasps that were stinging the face are like the innumerable desires that arise in the mind and agitate it, causing us pain and distress. Honey represents the sensual enjoyment we experience in the world, which clouds the discrimination of our intellect. Hence, forgetting our precarious position, we remain absorbed in enjoying the temporary delights of the senses. Sri Krishna states that it is this type of lustful desire that is responsible for shrouding our power of discrimination. The knowledge of even the most discerning gets covered by this perpetual enemy in the form of insatiable desire, which is never satisfied and burns like fire, O son of Kunti. Here, the inimical nature of Kvid macronym or lust is being made even more explicit by Lord Krishna. Kvid macronym means desire, Dupriya means insatiable, Anala means inexhaustible. Desire overpowers the discriminatory power of the wise and lures them to fulfill it. However, the more they attempt to douse the fire of desire, the more strongly it burns. The Buddha states, the senses, mind, and intellect are said to be breeding grounds of desire. Through them, it clouds one's knowledge and deludes the embodied soul. By revealing the locations where lust resides, Sri Krishna now indicates that there is a method of controlling it. The fortress of the enemy must be spotted before one can lay siege on it. In this verse, Sri Krishna states that the senses, mind, and intellect are the places from where lust exercises its dominion over the soul. Under the sway of lust, the sense objects are desired by the senses infatuate the mind misleads the intellect, and the intellect loses its discriminatory powers. When the intellect is clouded, the living being is deluded to become a slave of lust and will do anything to satiate it. These instruments, senses, mind, and intellect, are not bad in themselves. They were given to us for the purpose of achieving God realization, but we have permitted lust in its many forms to lay siege on them. Now, we have to use the same senses, mind, and intellect to uplift ourselves. In the following verses, Sri Krishna explains how to do that. Therefore, O best of the Bharats, in the very beginning bring the senses under control and slay this enemy called desire, which is the embodiment of sin and destroys knowledge and realization. Now, Sri Krishna explains how to overcome lust, the root of all evil, which is so pernicious to human consciousness. Having identified the repositories of lust, Sri Krishna asks Arjun, at the outset, to curb the desires of the senses. Permitting them to arise is the cause of our miseries, while eliminating them is the way to peace. Consider the following example. Ramesh and Dinesh were two fellow students sharing the same room in the hostel. At 10 p.m. at night, Ramesh developed the desire to smoke cigarettes. He said, I am getting the urge to smoke. Dinesh replied, it is so late at night. Forget about cigarettes and go to sleep. No, I will not be able to sleep until I puff the tobacco, said Ramesh. Dinesh went to sleep, but Ramesh went out in search of cigarettes. The shops nearby had closed. It took him 2 hours until he finally returned to the hostel with the cigarette and had a smoke. In the morning, Dinesh asked him, Ramesh, when did you sleep at night? At midnight. Really? That means you remained agitated for cigarettes for 2 hours, and when you had your puffs, you returned to the same state that you were in at 10 p.m. What do you mean by that? Asked Ramesh. Look, at 10 p.m. you did not have any desire for cigarettes, and you were peaceful. Then you yourself created the desire for them. From 10 p.m. to midnight, you remained agitated for cigarettes. Finally, when you smoked them, the disease which you had created went away and you got to sleep. I, on the other hand, did not create any desire and slept peacefully at 10 p.m. itself. In this way, we create desires for the objects of the senses of the body and then become agitated by them. When we get the cherished object, the disease of our own creation gets eradicated and we think of it as happiness. However, if we think of ourselves as the soul and our only purpose is happiness of the soul, then it becomes easier to renounce such material desires. Sri Krishna tells Arjun to bring the senses under control, thereby slaying the lust residing in them. To accomplish this, we must use the higher instruments given by God to us, as stated in the next verse. The senses are superior to the gross body, and superior to the senses is the mind. Beyond the mind is the intellect, and even beyond the intellect is the soul. An inferior entity can be controlled by its superior entity. Sri Krishna explains the gradation of superiority amongst the instruments God has provided to us. He describes that the body is made of gross matter. Superior to it are the 5 knowledge-bearing senses, which grasp the perceptions of taste, touch, sight, smell, and sound. Beyond the senses is the mind. Superior to the mind is the intellect, with its ability to discriminate. But even beyond the intellect is the divine soul. This knowledge of the sequence of superiority amongst the senses, mind, intellect, and soul can now be used for rooting out lust, as explained in the final verse of this chapter. Thus, knowing the soul to be superior to the material intellect, O mighty armed Arjun, subdue the lower self, senses, mind, and intellect by the higher self, strength of the soul, and kill this formidable enemy called lust. In conclusion, Sri Krishna emphasizes that we should slay this enemy called lust through knowledge of the self. Since the soul is a part of God, it is divine in nature. Thus, the divine bliss it seeks can only be attained from a divine subject, while the objects of the world are all material. These material objects can never fulfill the innate longing of the soul, and so it is futile to create desires for them. We must exert and train the intellect to think in this manner, and then use it to control the mind and the senses. This is explained very beautifully in the Kahopanihad with the help of the model of a chariot. The Upanishads say there is a chariot, which has 5 horses pulling it. The horses have reins in their mouths, which are in the hands of a charioteer. A passenger is sitting at the back of the chariot. Ideally, the passenger should instruct the charioteer, who should then control the reins and guide the horses in the proper direction. However, in this case, the passenger has gone to sleep, and so the horses are holding sway. In this analogy, the chariot is the body, the horses are the 5 senses, the reins in the mouth of the horses is the mind, the charioteer is the intellect, and the passenger seated behind is the soul residing in the body. The senses, horses, desire pleasurable things. The mind, reins, is not exercising restraint on the senses, horses. The intellect, charioteer, submits to the pull of the reins, mind. So, in the materially bound state, the bewildered soul does not direct the intellect in the proper direction. Thus, the senses decide the direction where the chariot will go. The soul experiences the pleasures of the senses vicariously, but these do not satisfy it. Seated on this chariot, the soul, passenger, is moving around in this material world since eternity. However, if the soul wakes up to its higher nature and decides to take a proactive role, it can exercise the intellect in the proper direction. The intellect will then govern the lower self, the mind and the senses, and the chariot will move in the direction of eternal welfare. In this way, the higher self, soul, must be used to control the lower self, senses, mind, and intellect.